Her son expelled her when he discovered she had lost her job, but he was unaware that she possessed a secret fortune. Martha remained silent as she closed a small wooden door behind her. The sound of the latch clicking sounded louder than it should have. Her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the worn leather handle of her suitcase, not because she was cold, but because she was holding back tears that only betrayal can bring. Derek, her son, stood in the doorway with his arms crossed, while Tanya, his wife, was behind him, silent but smug, like someone who had finally won an argument. Their home, once painted in warm blues and garden yellows, now felt cold and unwelcoming. The shutters were shut tight, even though the sun still shone high. "You should have told us." "Ma," Derek had said moments earlier, "you've been eating our food, sitting here all day, doing nothing." Martha blinked and replied, "I've been resting. I'm not well. I didn't want to worry you." Not well or not working. Tanya jumped in. "We're struggling. Derek, we can't carry your mama too. It's not fair." Derek didn't argue or defend her. He didn't offend the woman who raised him alone after his father's death, who cleaned motel rooms and skipped meals to buy him textbooks. Instead, he simply said, "It's time you figured out your own way. We've got kids to raise." And that was all. No hug. No thank you. Just the sound of her suitcase wheels dragging across cracked pavement as she walked away. Martha didn't cry then. Not even when she reached the old bus bench 3 streets over and sat down, feeling the weight of 72 years pressing into her spine. What her son didn't know was that she hadn't been fired. She had resigned. Her back had been giving out, and her doctor warned her to stop lifting heavy boxes. Even though the church wanted her to stay, she quietly stepped away. She knew how to live with little. She'd done her whole life, but she never imagined losing her part-time job would cost her everything else. As she sat on the bench watching cars pass, she thought about the house she once owned, the one Derek now lived in. It had been hers once, paid off after decades of hard work. She had signed it over when he promised to take care of her forever, but forever had ended quickly. Yet she felt no bitterness because Martha had something her son didn't know, something she had protected in silence. 34 years earlier, when Martha's husband died in a worksite accident, the insurance settlement was modest. Hidden within the paperwork was a deed to land deep in the countryside, left to them by an uncle neither had ever visited. The place had no water, no road, no apparent value. Everyone told her to sell it, but she didn't. Year after year, she scraped together just enough to pay the taxes, holding on to it just in case. Last fall, someone came looking for it. A young man in a suit said a developer was buying a property for a new solar energy project. He offered her a price that made her sit down. Martha asked for confidentiality. The funds were wired into a trust managed by a church foundation in her late husband's name. Only she could access it. To everyone else, she was still just Mama Martha, with her little apron and her empty purse. But inside that morning, as she walked away from her son's house, was a checkbook and a bank card linked to $1.4 million. Martha spent the night at a women's shelter, not because she had to, but because she wanted to be among people who understood what it meant to be overlooked. She shared her food, listened, and smiled when others couldn't. The next day, she visited a small property on the outskirts of town, a cottage with cracked walls, a leaking roof, and wild weeds overtaking the walkway. She paid cash, and 3 weeks later, it was quietly restored under the name Grace Holdings LLC. No one knew it was hers, and no one asked. She moved in peacefully, with a plan in her mind. Revenge was not her aim. She wanted to build something that wouldn't discard anyone. 2 years passed, and Derek's life changed, just not in the way he expected. The house he'd been so proud of, once paid off by his mother, fell into foreclosure. He tried side hustles, warehouse jobs, even quick online schemes. But debt, a failing marriage, and poor choices slipped through his fingers. Tanya eventually left, taking their 2 sons. And the house was silent, louder than any argument they'd ever had. That winter, Derek sat on a borrowed cot in a friend's basement, staring at a flyer he'd picked up earlier that day from the public library. The print was crisp and elegant. The headline read, "Martha's Table Community Meals, Shelter, and Support for Families in Need." He blinked at the name Martha. It couldn't be, but something inside stirred, shame, curiosity, and a desperate hope. The next morning, he crossed the town and found the building. It was beautiful in a humble way, fresh paint, sunflowers near the door, a carved wooden sign above the entrance. Inside, the smell of baked bread and warm soup filled the air. Children laughed in the distance. Volunteers moved gracefully from room to room. And behind the reception desk, dressed in a soft beige cardigan, sat a familiar woman. She looked older, but not defeated, stronger, calmer, radiating something Derek hadn't seen in years. Peace. "Mama," he whispered. Martha looked up, surprised at first but unshaken. She stood slowly and walked around the desk, her eyes fixed on him. He dropped his head, words tumbling out clumsily. "I lost the house. Tanya is gone. I have nothing. Mama, I didn't know where else to go." She let the silence breathe, then said gently, "Come inside. You look cold." They sat across from each other at a small table. Derek looked around, still in awe. "This place, it's yours." She nodded. "I thought when you left. I had nothing. I had peace," she replied. "And enough." Derek's hands gripped the mug she'd placed before him. "Why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you say you had money?" Martha looked at him carefully. "Would it have changed anything?" He didn't answer. She continued, "I wanted to see who'd stay close when I had nothing to offer. That's how I know who to build for. I didn't want riches. I wanted to be useful. I was awful to you." He admitted, "You trusted me, and I threw you out." Martha reached across the table and took his hand. "You forgot yourself. That doesn't mean you can't find your way back." Tears fell quietly. He didn't deserve her grace, but she gave it anyway. That spring, Derek began volunteering at Martha's table, fixing broken furniture, helping prepare meals, and eventually earning a job coordinating supplies. But more than that, he rebuilt his relationship with his mother. Every Friday, they sat together at sunset under the porch roof, watching children play. One evening, Martha handed him a worn envelope. He opened it and found the original deed to the house she'd once given him, and the check from the land she had sold. Now voided but framed. "You don't owe me anything," she said, "but now you know what happens when love comes before pride." He looked at her and, for the first time in years, truly saw her, not as a parent or caretaker, or a burden, but as a woman who built an empire of kindness from rejection's ashes. Years later, when Martha passed peacefully in her sleep, her funeral drew hundreds, people from shelters, schools, food pantries, and churches came to honor her. No headlines, no gold caskets, just stories. Stories of a woman who had nothing and gave everything. Derek stood before them, holding her favorite apron, and softly said, "My mother left this house once with a suitcase and a quiet heart, and in that silence, she built something greater than any of us ever knew. She didn't just feed people. She forgave them." Behind him, carved and above the main entrance, were the words she'd written when Martha's table opened. "The doors that close behind you can't match the ones you open for others." And Derek, once lost in bitterness, had become the man she believed he could be, all because the woman he cast out chose love over revenge. If you enjoyed the story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. Let us know in the comments where in the world you're watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching. Let me know if you like any further adjustments.